What's up guys? So today I'm going to be sharing with you 8 garage gym exercises for bigger quads. So obviously here we're dealing with slightly more limited equipment, so no leg presses, no hack squat machines, no leg extension machines, but each of these exercises are applicable to your workouts in the gym. So let's dive straight in. I'll show you your 8 exercises. So the first exercise I'm going to be showing you is a heels elevated back squat. Now to demonstrate what a heels elevated back squat gives you versus a traditional back squat, we'll first look at the traditional back squat which Ryan's going to perform here. So notice here the difference in his torso position and his knee range of motion just as he drops into that deep squat. So just give me a couple of reps. So notice the angle of his shins, angle of his torso. Ryan's a pretty decent squatter anyway, okay? So now we're going to take a look at the exact same squat, but with Ryan's heels elevated on these heel wedges. So he's going to take a step back with the bar, have approximately half his feet elevated on that heel wedge. That's a 20-degree incline, and he's going to drop himself into a nice deep squat. So automatically what you'll now notice is he's able to hit that depth much easier. His torso is more vertical and his shins are traveling forward a lot more, meaning that he's allowed to maintain that active range of motion in his quads for a lot longer period of time. That's it, we'll get back in. So our second exercise is another squat variation, which is going to be with the addition of some chains, or you can also use bands as well. So this is for that variable resistance. Now the way chains and bands work, they work very slightly differently, but most in common between them is that they increase resistance as you get up to the top of the squat. Now what happens when you squat is that in that deepest range of motion, your glutes are fairly active, but then your quads are most active as you drive up, and the highest activation is at the top of that squat. So if we can increase the weight via chains or bands at the top of that squat, we put a little more emphasis on those quads and we accommodate for that strength curve as well. So we're just going to have a look at Ryan perform 3 reps with chains. Generally, I'd recommend no more than about 20% of your 1RM in terms of the chain resistance. So let's say your 1RM is 200, you're not going to be putting on more than about 40 on top of there. So Ryan's just going to do 3 reps. Taking a step back, and just notice how the chains uncoil as he goes down, and then that load increases on the way up. Down, nice good step. Good, and walk it back. And one more thing to notice with these as well is just how we've set them up. We want it to fully uncoil almost all the way at the top, just leaving a little bit of the chain on the floor, but so you've got maximal weight of that on the top. I've used a daisy chain, so then when we get to full depth as well, we're almost completely unloading that chain. That's why we use a daisy chain, just so you can individualize that based on your own squat depth. So our second exercise, we spoke about loading the top of the squat more using chains. Now we're going to do a similar thing by using a high box squat. So what that means is that we're setting the box or seat to a position where you're not quite able to get below 90 degrees. So essentially we're loading the top of that squat a little bit more. That means you can also handle more weight as well, and your quads can take more of a percentage of that load. So Ryan's just going to give a few reps, and I'll walk you through it as he does it. So this is a proper box squat. He's actually going to sit down on the box or on the bench, and the bench is going to be taking about 50% of his weight before he drives up. So he's got to overcome that inertia of that slight dead stop before he fires up. So as I say, his knees are going to approximately 90 degrees, possibly closer to 100 degrees at the moment. And he's working his quads because he will be able to handle a lot more load than what he'd normally back squat with. Nice one, more run. Cool, done. So one of my favourite pieces of kit for any garage gym, or any gym really, is a safety squat bar. Now there's a bunch of stuff you can do with a safety squat bar besides your regular back squats, but one of my favourite exercises to do is a Hatfield squat. And as I said, today we're making things really quadriceps dominant. So with the Hatfield squat, the advantage is you can keep your torso very upright, very vertical, and your shins are almost just slightly traveling forwards as well with them. So you can make them really, really quadriceps dominant and chase that tension in your quads. So we're just going to have a look at Ryan performing a few reps of Hatfield squats. So these might feel a little bit alien if you're not used to doing these, but he's going to take a step back and he's going to adjust his stance just until he's comfortable, and then he's going to take his hands on the rack and just put a little bit of trust that that safety bar is going to stay there. Now just have a look at how easy it is for him to hit that depth. It's almost very similar to a hack squat at a gym. His torso is remaining relatively upright and he's able to maintain some active range of motion in those quads throughout that entire range of motion. Great job. Another favourite exercise is a front foot elevated split squat. Now when it comes to split squats, people talk about a heels elevated split squat as being very, very quadriceps dominant, which it is, but they forget about the front foot elevated split squat, which Ryan's going to demonstrate now. Now we've elevated that front foot up by maybe sort of 10 inches off the floor, and you'll adjust that depending on what you can handle. Now what you'll notice is he's going to start from the bottom position, and then as he drives through his heel to the top, he's actually never able to fully lock out his quad. So he's maintaining that tension throughout the exercise. And this is a really, really good one to start loading. And as long as you're not putting too much pressure through that back foot, we can get a lot of tension, a lot of load through that front leg. Just give it a couple more reps, Ryan. And remember, always try and include some single leg work into your quadriceps and hamstring dominant workouts. Now, one exercise that people like to avoid because they say it's bad for their knees is a leg extension. Now, whereas in fact, I'm actually a big fan of the leg extension. And that's because when you perform things like back squats, what most research studies show is that they don't activate this portion of your quads very well, your rectus femoris portion. Whereas exercises like leg extensions and sissy squats, which we're about to do, actually activate that to a greater degree. So they're making up for what squats, hack squats, leg presses can't do. Now, when it comes to a leg extension, you're loading that rectus femoris in a shortened position because your hip is flexed and your rectus femoris crosses over your hip. When we do a sissy squat, we're loading it in more of a lengthened position, and that comes down to the technique as well, which Ryan tends to be pretty good at. He's pretty tired at this point, but he tends to be pretty good at, but we'll show you how it's done. So we're using some support here on the rack, so balance is never going to be an issue, and just you're going to notice how straight his torso is as he drops into that deep sissy squat. So his knees are going to come forwards over his toes. He's maintaining that length, he's maintaining that extended hip at the bottom, so he's really getting a lot of length. Just get one more, that's it, nice, good, okay. He's getting a lot of length through that rectus femoris muscle and loading it at a really long length, which means there's got to be a lot of tissue damage or mechanical tension within that exercise. So there you go, sissy squats, top exercise, give those a go. So this is another version of the sissy squat called a bench sissy squat. Now, if you don't have a sissy squat bench, then you can just do what I've done here, which is basically a box, and on top of the box, I've just put a couple of plates just to weigh it down. And then in my rack, I've just used the safety bar, and I've just put a little bit of padding over the safety bar. So I'll show you how that works. So we've got a sissy squat bench, just by simply wedging our heels between the box and the safety bar. And all I'm going to do is just lean back, my toes are against the box. I'm going to build some tension throughout my quads. And again, I'm going to try and keep my hips relatively extended as I chase the tension at the bottom and then drive my toes into that box at the top. So I'm never going to lose tension by coming up to here. I'm staying back at the top, get some good depth, chase some tension, and repeat my reps. And we can also use dumbbells if we want to load those a little bit more, so we can have some dumbbells by our sides, or also using a resistance band as well. So bench sissy squats, give that exercise a go. So our last exercise are called Pike leg extensions. Now, I popularised these a while back, especially when people were in lockdown and couldn't get to the gym to do their leg extensions. So these are a really good alternative for those, and they work your quadriceps, especially your VMO, your vastus medialis, through terminal knee extension at the top. My favourite way to perform these are with your feet on a bench and using a resistance band like I'm going to demo for you now. So you're going to have that resistance band behind your knees. You're going to shorten it as much as you need to with your hands on the floor. So I'm going to start almost on all fours with my toes on the bench, back's nice and flat, and as I extend my knees, I'm building load into that band, squeezing hard at the top, and then dropping again. So I'm loading my quads almost like a leg extension at the top, and as I say, particularly that teardrop muscle above your knee called your vastus medialis, which is really important, especially for knee stabilization. That's your final exercise, which you can do almost anywhere. You don't need a garage gym to be able to perform that exercise. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed this YouTube video. Let me know how you get along. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube as well and check out the rest of my videos.